For all you groundhoppers out there, this podcast is for you.
Hey guys, this is a Fan of Fan podcast. I'm Ben.
And I'm Top List, and for all you groundhoppers out there, this podcast is for you. And tonight we are rejoined by Season 1, Episode 10. It's Frickley's finest. It's Ken again. Right, mate?
Hello.
Hello.
How are you?
Thank you for coming back on, mate. Yeah, we're fine. Thank you for coming on at short notice.
No,
Great
no
to see
problem.
you again.
I've got now.
We'll
I was reduced to watching Sheffield Wednesday versus whoever they were playing tonight, Cardiff.
Yeah. Brilliant, yeah. So it's time for your best 11. Now, obviously, you've got an affiliation with 3 clubs: Peterborough, Frickley, or Leeds. Who are you going with?
Well, I think Leeds have had so many great players I never saw. I can't go for them. Frickley, well, I'd need 200 players in the team because they're all great. So I'll have to go for the easy one. I'll have to go for Peterborough.
Peterborough United. All right then, the posh.
And you'll probably not find any other Peterborough fans to come on. So Leeds fans, they're 10 a penny. You'll find another Leeds fan in a few minutes if you want one.
Yeah. It's a very big club, aren't they? There's quite a lot of them. So yeah. We entered a proper non-league club. Yeah, so that'd be interesting. But we'll stick with the posh. Right.
So
the posh. Oh, I love that with the blue. We actually got the white sleeves on. Fantastic.
Lovely kit. Now, formation is 4-4-2, but we can change it.
No, I'm happy with 4-4-2. No, I'm happy with that. That's what we'll have. 4-4-2.
A classic 4-4-2.
Yeah.
Mike Bassett's very own.
Absolutely. Yeah, got to go 4-4-2. Know what you're doing with 4-4-2.
So we'll start with goalkeeper. Who's going to make it into Peter's best 11?
Well, now we were just talking about this a bit back, and obviously Peterborough have actually had some decent keepers over the years. People like David Seaman, who for me, I was never convinced when he played for Peterborough. I didn't think he was going to go on to the things he went on to. So we've had players like that. We've had people like Ian Bennett that went on to play at a higher level. We've obviously had a lad called God, his name's just escaped me for a minute. Lucky I wasn't going to have him in the team. Our record appearance maker. Someone will put me right at some point, I'm sure. But for me, number one goalkeeper for me was he's now at Aberdeen, a lad called Joe Lewis. And he was tall, big, tall lad, well over 6 foot. He was a decent shot stopper. He knew when to clear his lines. None of this playing out from the back nonsense. And as a rarity, he actually made the England squad whilst he was still with Peterborough. And when England went on tour before the 2014 World Cup, we went to the Caribbean and we played someone like, I don't know, Costa Rica or Trinidad and Tobago, someone like that. And he actually made the bench. I mean, he was number 3 and he was never going to get on, but he made the bench. So I thought, well, that's it. I ain't going to see many Peterborough players in the England squad. So he has to get number 1 spot.
There he is.
Oh, fair play.
Joe Lewis. I say he was one I thought would go on to great things, and he went off to Cardiff. Never seemed to set the world on fire. Now he's playing for Aberdeen. I saw him just a couple of weeks ago on Sky, and he was a perfectly decent keeper. But I think he had his finest days in a Peterborough shirt.
What about right back? We'll start with the defence.
Now, see, rights and lefts. I'm just reading a book at the minute about Leeds United's last championship winning team back in 91-92. And they talked to a lot of the key players and key events and what have you. And they talked to John McClelland. And John McClelland he's renowned really for being a centre half. But he got his break into the Leeds team because he'd been bought as like a squad player at the end of his career. And they bought Ray and Rod Wallace. And Ray Wallace was a fullback, and he was having a mare one day in a friendly. And they said, "Can anyone else play at fullback?" And he put his hand up and said, "Yeah, I can." He said, "You're a centre half." He said, "Left back, right back, centre back. I'll play anywhere for you." Put him out there, and he obviously won a championship medal by doing the very same thing. So If I get him, if anyone says, well, he's not a right back, he's a left back. This will be why. So my lefts and my rights. But for me, right back has got to be. So we've just had Joe Lewis, the only Peterborough player I saw in an England squad. For right back for me has got to be Bryn Gunn, the only Peterborough player. No, that's not true. He's the only Peterborough player I've seen that got a European Cup winners medal. He came on a sub for Nottingham Forest in the 1980 European Cup final against
Hamburg. Yeah.
And they say that it was because Forest were absolutely down to the bare bones with injury, and that Clough said something along the lines of, "Well, we're putting Bryn Gunn on now. We are absolutely." So, but for us, he wasn't the only player that played for Peterborough that actually had a European Cup winners medal. We actually had a lad called Alan Waddle that was on the bench for Liverpool in either the 77 or 78 final. But he didn't come on. He didn't actually appear. But he did play for Peterborough afterwards. So Bryn Gunn wasn't even the first player with a European Cup winners medal to play for Peterborough. But I always loved him, and he was always get a penalty. You knew it was a goal. Bryn Gunn, he's getting. Remember him scoring against Crewe that kept us in the Football League in about back end of April in 1989. So for that alone, he's in the team.
Fair enough.
Am I right? Is it spelled like that? Or have I spelled it wrong?
Bryn Gunn, Bryn, just one N, and then Gunn, two N's. Bryn Gunn, and he got into all the Panini late 1970s, early 1980s. He's there. He's old Bryn. He went on to play for definitely played for Chesterfield. I think he also went on to play for Grantham. I think, but that could be a fib. Because I didn't have preparation time. It also means I didn't have time to get nervous. So if it's factually incorrect, there we go.
Is there any relation to the old Norwich keeper, Brian Gunn there?
No, he's not actually. No, he's actually from down here, whereas the Norwich keeper is obviously from further up north.
He's Scottish, isn't he, Brian Gunn? Yeah. His
daughter is plays cricket, or did play cricket for England. Did Bryn Gunn? I think his daughter's name was Jenny. One of there was a lad played for West Ham called David Cross. His daughter played for England at cricket as well, so it must be in the genes. Bit of sporting ability.
And while we're on the subject of full-back, sorry Ben, let's go for the left back.
Yeah, that's fine.
Now then, left back. I see. I've got to go from a player from the same sort of era actually. Now he could play further forward. And he's another one that could play on either side for you if you really wanted him to. But for me, I want Noel Luke in as my other fullback, because Gunny was the solid one. He hung back a bit, and Noel Luke bombed forward. He'd get you a goal, and the lad played over 300 times for the club. Played at Wembley when we won the playoffs for the first time in '92. Promoted with us in '91, and obviously played for us in the Peterborough team that finished highest ever in the league in '93. Finished 10th in the what is now the Championship. We dream of those days again. So Noel Luke for me. I think he now works for something like a lorry driver or a postman or something like that now in Peterborough, but and he won't accept my friends' requests on Facebook, but that aside, he's still a legend. He's still a legend to me. 300 games in the blue shirt. You don't see many players doing that in any club these days, do you?
No.
So to do that, he's your man. I think he started at West Brom in the same squad as like the 3 Degrees, Brendan Batson, Cyril Regis, and Laurie Cunningham. And he was also in the reserves with I think he was just before Steve Bull, but he was there that sort of era. So like I say, and then West Brom I think had to cut costs and they had to get rid of the reserve side, and that was what forced him to move on. And what have you. So, but West Brom's loss, Peterborough's game.
We'll go for the first centre back. We'll go for right centre back. Who are we going for?
Centre back. Now, let me think. Oh God, I'm awful because I'm going the same era again. But for me, it has got to be. He's probably one of my favourite Peterborough players of all time. To be honest, was a lad called Keith Oakes. Now, Keith Oakes, he was the only player still at the club, or at the club, that had played in Peterborough's 4th Division Championship winning team in 73, 74. And he only played about, 3 or 4 games or 6 games or something like that. And most of them was a sub. But he was sort of like the link in the 80s and early 90s from back our championship days. But he went on to play for Newport County when they won their Welsh Cup for the only time. And they went to the quarterfinals of the European Cup Winners' Cup. But he was one of them players that he wasn't the quickest, but he was an absolute man mountain. There's no way you'd have argued with him. He was the sort of player that stood there at the back. You know the centre half stance where they stood sort of half crouched down, shaking their fists at people and banging their fist in their palm and come on, we can do this, which he had to do a lot of, to be honest, in that first season I was watching him, because we were nearly always behind. But he was always good for a goal as well. He scored that season. He only scored about half a dozen, but for a centre half, that's not bad. But every goal he scored seemed to be crucial. It was either a last minute equaliser, or it was a winner, or it was the goal that got us going. It wasn't the one that sticks in my head was Harry Kuehl at Leeds. He once had a season when he scored about 11 or 12. But out of the 11 or 12, 10 of them must have either been the 4th goal in 4, or it was the consolation when we were 3-0 down. None of them were crucial. Yeah, so we were getting the plaudits for scoring these amazing goals, and they were amazing goals, super goals, but they weren't crucial goals. Whereas Oaksy, they were all stick your head in amongst the boots.
Big game, man. Yeah,
but it were a goal that mattered. It got you. I remember us drawing in about March time of that season against Tranmere, who went on to obviously got promoted eventually to the Championship, and they played in League Cup finals and what have you. And I say 5 minutes into injury time, stuck his head in amongst the boots, got us a point. So, and do we have to pick a captain?
Ooh.
We've
not had the captains before, but if you want to pick that, mate, you can start us off.
He's captain already, is Oaksy.
Fair enough.
If he shook his fist at you and told you need to play better, he would. There's no doubt about it. Oaksy's your man, and he had a massive, great big, like sweeping brush moustache as well. So proper 70s sort of porn star tash.
And who's going to be Oakes?
Who's going to
now finish off the back 4?
I'm going to go a bit more. I'm going to go so right back. Then we're going to come right forward to the current team, and I'm going to have Mark Beavers as me want to go with him now. Mark Beavers is in the team 10. In fact, he won man of the match tonight against this afternoon against Sunderland, and I'm going to have Mark Beavers because he's one of them players. Them sort of players. They're 7 out of 10 every week. They turn up and they do their job. They're not fancy. They're not frilly. And he's a big, tall lad, good in the air. He's good on the deck for a big lad. What was it? Got quick feet for a big lad. And he doesn't mess. And he's another one. He can play it out from the back, but he knows when to play from the back, and he knows when just to put his laces through it and get rid. So he would, and he's got a bit more pace than Oaksy. So I think they'd be a perfect pairing together, Oaksy and Mark Beavers. So they're one for the modern fans.
Never nice, when next Wednesday player getting into someone's best 11.
Absolutely, yeah. He played quite a few games for him and all, didn't he?
He did, yeah.
Right. But we can't hold that against him.
No.
We can't hold that against him. He's done the right thing. He got out, didn't he?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm afraid I've got another Wednesday player for you in a bit. So yeah.
Oh
dear. Oh dear. Right. So there's the back four.
Yep.
Where do you want to go next? I'm going to give you the choice: centre mid, right or left mid.
Well, see, again, it's funny, isn't it, these days? You talk about left and right midfielders, and they regularly swap during the game, don't they? To just try something different, and I quite like that. And I can see that. I love to see a player go out on the outside and cross it in the same way. I like to see a player cut inside. So let's see, who am I gonna go for? I am gonna go for. I'm gonna go wide on the. I'm going to go wide on the left then. I'm going to start out there. And I'm going to go for a lad called that no one will have ever heard of. And if you look for him online, you will not find a picture of him either. A lad called Craig Goldsmith. And the reason we loved him was because he was one of us. He played back in the very late 80s. But he was basically a fan. He virtually come from the terraces himself. Played in Saturday football. He got picked up by the club. And he didn't play much. He only played about 40 games. Went on to Carlisle, played about another handful of games there. So really didn't play a lot of league football. But the games he played, he was one of those players, again, he made a difference. Every time he got on the ball, everyone loved him. They were chanting his name, Goldie, Goldie. Because he was one of us, everyone knew he was one of the fans. And he was a Peterborough lad through and through. And he played for the badge. And you know what it's like. Sometimes you have players that are not technically the best, but they play for the badge. And, and he was another one that when he scored goals that mattered. He scored crucial goals when you were 2-1 down. He'd get you an equaliser. He'd get you a winner. Like I say, he was one that I thought, now he's going to be destined for great things. Completely wrong. Back in non-league football within 18 months. I think last I heard he was a publican. Of course, what else do you become as an 80s footballer? Working public. But Goldie, he was man. He was quick. He was tricky. I still can't believe he didn't go on to greater things in the game. I really can't. He was for me. He was one of the most exciting players that I saw play for Peterborough. His star burnt bright. But it didn't burn for very long, unfortunately.
Did he have any problems with injuries?
Not particularly. I think it's just his form dropped off because he came into professional football quite late. I mean, he was about 26, 27 when he started playing for us. So he was never going to have a long career. And I think it were a case of, he'd been one of these leading lights in non-league football in the area. And, they thought, well, let's give him a go. And it was a funny old time for Peterborough. We had some funny old managers. We had people like... we had Mick Jones as manager, who was Neil Warnock's right-hand man for a long time. A lot of the clubs he went on to go to. And we had Mark Lawrenson, off of Match at Day.
Mark Lawrenson?
Yeah.
It was his only managerial job. He was there for a season. So I'm not convinced that he was managed particularly well. But then in the same way, I think with him being such an older player when he played, he probably didn't have the training that today's players have, and that's probably part of the problem, I'm guessing. But there you go.
Was he a publican back then as well? Just saying, you never know. Yeah,
weren't all of them? Yeah, I think all of them were fond of a pint or two back then.
Yeah.
I don't think I'd have had to go too far to find them in pubs and clubs in Peterborough if I'd have looked. But and he had long blonde curly hair, so he looked like the lead singer out of Europe, or So he had the once he got going, he got the hair flowing behind him. This mane of blonde locks as well, So he looked the part. He properly looked the part. But like I say, better to have loved and lost than to have never loved at all, I suppose. So good old Goldie. Hope he's out there somewhere. Hope he hears this.
Who's going to be the centre mid that's playing next to him on the left side?
Centre mid. Well, now what I'm going to have, because I know what Peterborough are like. We need a bit of grit in the middle there. I'm going to go Grant McCann, who is currently manager. Where is he manager now? Is it Hull? Is he Hull City manager?
Was he Hull or
Yeah.
is he Hull now? I know he's managing somewhere now.
Yeah, he's at Hull.
He is at
He'll be
Hull, yeah.
He was manager of Doncaster, wasn't he? He was manager of Peterborough for the time.
He was, yeah. He was
was
manager and he got sacked, and then you nicked Steve Evans off Mansfield. I think he was who got sacked.
You can have Steve Evans. I was like, oh God, Steve Evans, dear oh dear. But anyway, yeah, Grant McCann for me. Yeah, started started at West Ham, I think, didn't he? And so he's well versed in the football academy, I suppose, and you know, did his dues in the low divisions at Cheltenham and Scunthorpe, and then came to us, and yeah, just he had everything. You know, he could see a pass. He could, you know, he could ping you a 60-yard crossfield ball. He could do that. He could hit a penalty. He could hit a decent free kick. I think he. Well, this is putting Wednesday down. I remember him scoring a fantastic free kick from about 20 yards, 25 yards. Now, did that get us promoted? I think it did in the end, and kept Sheffield Wednesday in League One back then. And yeah, Grant McCann, gritty, feisty, and you know, he was still winning caps even when he was at Peterborough. So he was still playing for the Northern Ireland side even back then. But so he obviously had quality. You know, you don't win as many caps as he does for any international side unless you're a little bit a cut above. When you think some of the players he was playing with Northern Ireland, there was obviously something there. And so certainly he was another one. He was one of these players that, you know, shake your fists at everyone saying, "Come on, let's do this." And I suppose with me being so completely talentless at football, I relate more to these people that are gritty and stick a boot in than I do to these lads with the twinkle toes. Because I can see how you can be gritty and shake your fist and shout at people. And kick people. I can't quite see how you dribble around 3 and 4 and flicks and what have you. But yeah, so Grant McCann for me, vice captain as well, by the way. After Oaksey, okay. Grant McCann, he gets the vice captain slot. This is Grant. So yeah, Grant McCann. There we go.
Who's gonna?
He played in teams that seemed to play decent football as well and actually attacked. So he wasn't all about the grit. He could see a pass. He knew where the goal was. You know, even when he had these spells as caretaker manager, we went. Brother-in-law Chris, who I told you about with Frickley, he is still doing the 92, and he hadn't done Shrewsbury, so we went one at the end of one season to see him play at Shrewsbury, and Grant McCann was manager. And it was a typical Grant McCann game. I think we were cruising at, I don't know, about 2-0 up or 3-1 up. And then with 5 minutes to play, then Shrewsbury pulled it back to 3-3 in injury time. And then we still managed to go down the other end and score another and win 4-3. I thought, that's Grant McCann all over that. His team's attack. I haven't seen enough of Hull. So, I mean, if he's still at Hull, then they're doing very well, aren't they? So,
yeah.
And if he gets Hull back up, brilliant work. Fair play to him. But yeah, so Grant McCann, he's my first in the middle of midfield then.
And who's going to be his partner in midfield?
Now, I'm going to have another long-term club man. I'm going to have a lad called Mickey Halsall. And I think he's something like the head of youth development at somewhere like West Brom, but he started at Liverpool. So he was from the famous sort of Liverpool reserves that never made it through to the first team. And he got shifted on to Birmingham City. He's in one of the Panini albums, something like Panini 83, and then got offloaded to Peterborough, and he stayed for years. But he was genuine quality. I was amazed that he stayed with us for so long. He was another one that was in that team that got promoted out of the 4th division in 91, got promoted to what is now the Championship through the playoffs in 92. And I think he was another player that played nearly 300 times for us. So another very, very loyal club player. I think he had a little spell as manager at one point, caretaker manager. But you know, the lad has come through at Liverpool. And, you know, even if you don't make it into the first team, you were obviously a very, very decent footballer. And like I say, some of the goals he used to score, fantastic. He was the one player that always used to get his goals on, like, you know, now obviously we have Match of the Day. Back then we had like ITV programs, things like the Big Match, what have you. And if they ever did it on Peterborough, you could almost guarantee it'd be the day he scored. He'd always, it's like he knew the cameras were there, and he pulled out all the stops when the cameras were there. We played, I think it was the first day of the 89-90 season. We played Maidstone United in their very first game in the Football League. And you can still see it on YouTube, but he pulled out like a 25-yarder for the cameras. So, yeah, he always, and he'd always score a decent, spectacular goal. And we weren't great at that in the early days that we were there. And we were getting tonked by teams like Carlisle and Scarborough and what have you. We'd be getting done 3 and 4-1, but the one would always be his, and it'd always be the goal of the game. So, yeah, he knew what we were doing. He knew what we were doing, that lad. And again, like Grant McCann, gritty, a decent footballer. And he was one that you always felt he cared. You know, another one that played for the badge. So, yeah, there we go.
Remind me of the name again, sorry.
Say again. Mick Halsall. Halsall.
There we go. Halsall.
There you go. And on the right,
games
right side of midfield.
Right. Well, now then, it's going to be the first of the Holy Trinity. They talk about the Holy Trinity at Everton, don't they? Being Colin Harvey, Howard Kendall, and Alan Ball. No. The Holy Trinity is, well, I'll tell you just the first, because we'll have to save the other two. First one has got to be Boydie, Charlie Boyd. So Charlie Boyd, he's one that he started at Charlton Athletic, and so I feel a little bit linked with him because he used to work in the sweet shop at the train station next to where my dad used to live. So not that obviously I wouldn't have recognised him at the time. I wouldn't know that. But he worked in the sweet shop at the local railway station. Did Boydie, and he went into non-league with Stevenage, and it was at the time when Peterborough still pick up players from non-league. We picked him up from non-league, and he was one of these players. He must have been called something like White Pele at some point. He bound to be, because they all were. And yeah, when he came through at Peterborough, his touch, his vision. You know, even though he's, I told you I like these gritty players that can get a boot in, and that wasn't Boydie. But you know, you watched him some days, and he was absolutely unplayable. Here's another one that I say he played at. We played at Sheffield Wednesday, and he played simply the best 45 minutes of any player I've ever seen in a blue shirt, and he absolutely destroyed them. He scored 2, and he should have scored 6, 7, 8. He had about another 2 cleared off the line. He hit the bar. He was just unplayable. And I think we were 3-0 up at half time, and he set up 1 goal, scored 2 of them, and just absolutely incredible. And he had played for England C, so the non-league England team. And I think in the end he ended up playing for, I think he got B caps for Scotland, I think. So he was so close to being international class, and I was amazed he stayed with us as long as he did. So he was part of that team sort of from 2006 onward that got sort of yo-yoed, went from Division 4 up to the, what would it have been then, League 2, up to the Championship, and we sort of yo-yoed a couple of years, and he stayed all that time. And Jake, you what was the story about his eyes? I can't remember. I know
Nottingham Forest were going to sign him, and he failed the medical because of his sight. And he went to Hull, and that season he scored against them, and he ran in front of Forest fans like that.
That's it. Yeah. I remember being gutted when he went, because he went on loan, didn't he, at Forest for a bit, and earlier that season. And yeah, obviously when he went on to Hull, played in the FA Cup final against Arsenal. He obviously spent a bit of time then in the Premier League with Burnley. Sadly, you know, he's blotted his copybook because I think he spent a bit of time at Sheffield Wednesday. But he did come back, and Played a couple of games for Peterborough last season, the aborted season, but you could see that the years were taking their toll and the injuries and what have you. But no, for out and out class, he was probably one of the best, and all the some of the best players that played with him always said that he had the most vision, and he was the player that made it for him. He was the player that made a lot of the goals. He was the one that made the team tick. And if he wasn't making the goals, he was dragging other players out of position, following him because he knew he could, and that made space for other players. So there you go, Boydie.
So who's going to be his first striker?
Well, because we've just had Boydie, let's go for the second of the Holy Trinity. And that's got to be CMS, Craig McKyle-Smith. So Craig McKyle-Smith, another one plucked from non-league obscurity. I think he was with, I want to say Dagenham, but it might not have been. Craig McKyle-Smith, an absolute predator. They talk about fox in the box, but he was the one that said Boyd was the best player he ever played with, and he laid on half of his goals. And in the end, he scored 99 for us. He was left iron dry, one short of the ton. I think he went into his last game, which was the playoff final against Huddersfield.
That 8-minute game.
That's it, yeah. And I think he was on 98 that game, or 97. And he scored 2 or 1, I forget now. And just left him just short of the 100. And he's been back on loan since, but the injury, he's injury ravaged now. His legs are gone. Too many injuries over the years. Too many kicks from big centre halves. Unfortunately, I was hoping we'd get a penalty and they'd let him take it just to get his 100th goal for Peterborough. But no, iron dry on 100. But like I say, some of the best performances I've ever seen were, with Boydie and McKyle-Smith doing this stuff. And as I say, he got capped for Scotland. I remember seeing him play for Scotland against Brazil, of all places, at Highbury. Scotland versus Brazil, Highbury. Sorry, not Highbury, at the Emirates. Big part.
Emirates, yeah.
So at the Emirates, and so he got his cap for Scotland. But and he one of them players that I always remember when he left. He went to Brighton, and when he went, the manager. Darren Ferguson said that this lad deserves. We've got to let him go because he deserves to, for the efforts he's put in for the club. He deserves a reward, and he deserves to be a millionaire. And by going to Brighton, that'll make him a millionaire. So it was one of them ones where I was gutted that he was going, but actually for the lad himself, you thought, yeah, do you know what? He has done enough. He got us promoted at least at least 3 times. He was involved in the goals, and he was another one that every game he went to, you could almost guarantee, no matter what happened, win, lose or draw, Carl Smith would be on the score sheet. Like I say, and I don't suppose he scored many from more than about 8 yards out, but he was. Just one
point I was going to make there, pal. Sorry to interrupt, but he was on loan at Notts County the year they went down from League Two, and I saw him play because I went to Meadow Lane to see where Mansfield played him. And, 35 years old he was. I thought he was fantastic. We lost 1-0. He scored. It was a volley outside the box. It was a decent volley. But at 35 years old, I thought he dominated us. And obviously I was seething after that game. I said to everybody after, it was the worst Mansfield performance I've ever seen from any Mansfield team. But 35-year-old McKyle-Smith that day was absolutely fantastic. Running around like a madman. He
was busy, wasn't he? That was what I used to love.
Hard worker.
Exactly, yeah. I mean, and as any football fan will tell you, if you've got someone that works hard, you'll actually forgive them a load of failures, just because they look like they're putting that effort in, and he looked bothered. When we conceded a goal, he looked like he cared. There you are. For sure. So that was number 2 of the Holy Trinity.
And who's number 3 going to be then?
3. I'm afraid he only goes onto the bench. He only makes it on the bench as number 3, because the other striker, I'm afraid, has got to be the original King Kenny. None of this Kenny Dalglish nonsense.
What?
Kenny Charlery. Kenny Charlery. Like I say, he was another of those players. He just made things happen. You know, and I just love these players that make stuff happen. If it's not happening for them, they go out there and they do something. You know, they're harrying centre halves, and of course he scored 2 fantastic goals when we reached the playoff final at the old Wembley in '92 against Stockport County. And I always, I mean, it's mad because it was the first time I'd ever been to the old Wembley, and obviously I was at the old Wembley and I was sitting there thinking, "Oh, this is where England won the World Cup." And obviously you think of you think of Jeff Hurst's goals, you think about the one, well, was it over the line, was it not, the one that bounced down, and then you think about they think it's all over, and he gets that fantastic volley from, half volley from however many yards right at the death there. And I think King Kenny, he must have seen that just before the game, because his first goal, he hit the bar and it dropped down on the line, and still from the replays, I can't tell whether it went over. Luckily, the linesman was from Uzbekistan, and he said, yes, Kenny scored. So that was our first goal. And then I don't suppose you'll remember a player called Kevin Francis, but he was one of, at the time, he was the tallest player in the Football League at 6'7". But unlike Peter Crouch, he was actually built like a player that was 6'7". He was 6'7" high, and he was about 4 feet wide and all. He was an absolute man mounted, and he equalised for Stockport. So it left it right at the death. It looked like we were going into extra time with about 9 minutes left to go. And Ken Charlery, he did another Jeff Hurst, picked the ball up on halfway, ran it in, and then just smashed it in from about 25 yards. He must have been knackered in the sunshine. It was too hot. So he thought, I can't go another 10 yards and make it easy, or another 15 yards and go around the keeper. He thought, sod it, I'm just smashing it from here. And it was just like that. So he belted from the halfway line, just smashed it in. The hordes of Peterborough fans, we went mad. And that were it. We were up into what is now the Championship for the first time in our history. And there's a great photograph of him with because they used to give you a trophy. I think they still do, don't they? Give you a trophy in the playoffs.
Yeah,
that's
definitely.
right. And but the trophy was an awful thing. It looked like a scepter, sort of thing the Queen perhaps knights people with. I don't know, but great picture of him stood in front of the fans, shaking his fists and holding this, waving this blooming this trophy. Got a great big eagle on the top. I think it was sponsored by Barclays at the time, so Barclays Bank logo on the top. But King Kenny, Wembley hero, and he was a good goal scorer anyway. I mean, even in the league, he was a decent player. I think he ended up going to Watford, and he was another of these players that kept coming back to Peterborough over the years. He'd come back on loan for a bit, and then he'd go off again, and but he was sort of in and out of the team for the next few years. But yeah, the proper King Kenny Charlery. Another lad from non-league, of course, as well. So he came from Mason, I think, originally. So most of these Peterborough players too, at some point they've been in non-league, and obviously we've got a good system of finding these little gems and what have you. But yeah, so King Kenny gets the last slot, and because he was a bit of a bigger lad, I think he played well with Carl Smith as well, I reckon. So there we go.
Fair play.
So we're going to give you 3 subs.
Right. Well, my first sub then has got to be the third one of the Holy Trinity. It's got to be Aaron McLean. Who currently you've perhaps seen him on. He does a lot of the what do you call it? He's like the one of the pundits on the Panorama League stuff that's on BT. So he's quite often on there. He comes across very eloquent, and but he was absolutely brutal as a striker, and he was one of them players. He went on to Hull. And he was never, and I think he went to Barnet, and he was never quite the same player. He was another one that got hit by injuries and what have you. But he had the season we got promoted out of League Two, which was about 2006, 2007, something like that. And he was absolutely stunning. He got to, I think he scored 29 in the league. I think he scored, which is a decent tally for any division, for any player. And he was brutal. Saw him play at right at the back end of the season against Grimsby, and he just tacked everything. He just tacked everything. When he got on the ball, he just hit it so hard. I think of Peterborough players, he would be the player I would say hit the ball harder than anybody else. And he was one of those players. He could score in the box, he could score out of the box, and he was powerful. He was one of them players you'd have hated to defend against, because he was, he hassled defenders. He put the shoulder in, and number 3 of the Holy Trinity, Aaron McLean. And it's always nice seeing him when you see him on the. He was probably on tonight, Stockport Bromley. Unfortunately, I didn't watch that one. I was watching one of the other lesser games, I should think. But he's one of these. Anytime Barnett's on, he's always the pundit with Barnett as well, because obviously he played there. But Aaron McLean for me. He's another one that kept coming back over the years. He came on loan again a couple of times, and he was player coach for a bit. And like I say, but Aaron McLean's your man. So he's first subbing.
What about number 2?
Now let's think. Another 2. Now I'm going to have as my. I'm going to have as my utility sub. I think I'm going to have Joe Newell. Now he played for Rotherham for a bit. Now he used to drive me bloody nuts because he was one of them players you could tell he was a decent player. I think he's playing for Hibs now in the Scottish Premier League, and you could tell he was a decent player. But he was one of them players. I saw him play in all sorts of different places, and he had that streak of madness. We got to the Johnston Paints final at Wembley. We're 2-1 up against Chesterfield, 2014, I think, 2015, and they're actually playing better than us, but we are winning, and so obviously we need to close down the game, manage the game. So Joe does that in his own inimitable style by 2-footing one of their players and getting himself a straight red. So we had to play the last 25 minutes with 10 men against a team that was actually playing better than us. But he was one of them players you could see he was a decent player. And he was one of them players that would slot into. He was another one. He played for the badge, and he would slot into any position. He'd play in centre midfield. He'd play out on the wing for you. He'd play in defence at fullback. So perfect substitute material for me. And he run for fun. He was a proper 90-minute player. Not that he ever got 90 minutes because he was nuts. As I say, 2-footed tackle at Wembley. But yeah, he would be my. I think he'd be my second sub, because he would come on and he'd play anywhere for you, and he'd do whatever he. Well, no, he wouldn't do whatever you wanted him to do at all. He'd do his own thing, I'm sure. But he'd play wherever you told him to play. That's what he'd do. He'd just be happy to be there, and he ran around like a Labrador and gets in people's way, and he scored the odd goal or two as well. I certainly remember him scoring. I think he scored. If I remember right, he scored at Ellen Road against Leeds United in one of our ventures there. So he would be my sub number 2.
And the final sub?
Now then, what have I got? I've got a striker, haven't I? I've got Joey Newell that could play anywhere. Now then. This is a tough one. My third sub, I am going to go for... I'm going to go for a lad called Steve Collins. Is who I'm going to go for. And Steve Collins, well, his nickname when he was at the club was Psycho. Now, this was just about the time that Stuart Pearce came out. So I'm certain, this is definitely true, because I've just made it up this minute, that Stuart Pearce got his nickname Psycho from Steve Collins. He was the sort of player that he swallowed his tongue one game. Got knocked out clean cold, and the physio had to, because he put in his head where really you shouldn't put your feet, let alone your head, and he got knocked clean out cold. And he's another one. He would do anything for the team. And I actually do speak to him actually quite a bit on Facebook, and he engages with a lot, like a lot of these groups, like football from the 80s, football from the 90s, that sort of thing. And he'll actually talk to you and say, he was a great player. Loved playing with him. He was a nice lad. Used to have him round for tea and stuff like that. There was a lad who played for Doncaster Rovers called David Hall that signed for Peterborough, and he's renowned at Peterborough and at Doncaster Rovers being such an hard nut. And I said, he was an hard player, him. And Steve Collins messaged me and said, He might have been hard nut on the pitch, but he was a lovely lad, and we used to go around the pubs together in Stamford, and he used to come around for tea, and he'd tell stories like that. So Stevie Collins gets in because he's a nice bloke, but two, because he was properly hard as nails. I say he was the original psycho. He was. As I say, Stuart Pearce nicked his nickname. The only thing I've got against him is that he supports Leicester. But we'll forgive him for that. So, so Steve Collins, he's another one. He would play. He could play anywhere across the back four. He could play anywhere across midfield. And I think if he had tried, he'd have made a decent. He didn't score enough goals for me. I thought he should score more goals. But he's another player that if you had a close game, you need to close the game out. He'd be your man to bring on. He'd also be a good one. When Peterborough playing. When we play Bayern Munich in the Champions League final, he would have been the player to bring on to nobble Lewandowski. He'd have sat on him. Lewandowski wouldn't have got a sniff with Steve Collins. So there you go. He's my third sub, Stevie Collins.
Fair play. And who would you like? Sorry, Ben, gone.
Final question. Who's going to be the manager for this team?
There's no competition here, is there? There is only well, say there's only one. See, Barry Fry runs it close. He does run it close. Who else runs it close? Let's see. Turner, he runs it close as well. But for me, he's got to be Darren Ferguson. Because I mean, he's. I think how many times has he been at the club now? Is it 3?
Third spell.
Is it third spell? Or is it fourth? Or it's definitely not second. He's had at least 2 spells before the spell he's in.
I've heard 2, yeah. I think he might be third. I don't know.
He just keeps coming back, and it's never dull with the Ferguson team. It is never dull. The philosophy for years was, well, look, if they score 4, we'll score 5. That sort of philosophy, and our defending was a bit Keystone Cops and a bit chaotic, but going forward with the Holy Trinity, McLean, McCarl Smith, and Boyd, backed up by players like Grant McCann, players at the back like Jack Baldwin and folks like that. Got to be Darren Ferguson's the manager. And like I say, it's still theoretically possible that we go up this year. I mean, we're in the top 2. I still think Sunderland actually will overtake us, to be honest. Although Sunderland and Hull have got to play each other in a couple of weeks' time, so that might do us a favour. And I don't think I'm not sure our form is quite there for a promotion push. And if we do go up, I think that's one of your relegation spots next year sorted out. So the rest of the championship will be quite pleased because there'll be 2 relegation spots because we'll be taking one of them, which is what we usually do. Up one season, down the next. But no, never dull with Daz Ferguson's teams. As I say. And we went for about 2 or 3 years where we were scoring 100+ goals a season. Well, in this day and age, how many teams do you see score 100? This is including cup goals, of course. But getting past the 100 mark in a season, something else. And I don't know whether it's him that picks these players for non-league, but he must have some sort of okay in there. And you look at some of the players we brought in from lower leagues, like Sombalonga, who was very close to the squad. Sorry, Britt, if you're listening. It's been a bad week for Britt Sombalonga because he's going to be released by Middlesbrough, and he's just found out he's not in my squad. But Britt Sombalonga, Dwight Gale, another one that went very close to the squad. He could be having a bad season, down with Newcastle and not in this squad. But both players that have played under Daz Ferguson, I do believe. But yeah, Darren Ferguson. The only thing that gutted me about Darren Ferguson is he never used to twist his dad's arm more and say, "Can we not borrow so-and-so on loan?"
Yeah.
Look, Michael Carrick's not getting a game. Is there no chance he can come down here? Or Ruvan Nistelrooy, look, he's coming back from injury. Could he not come down here and play against Rochdale on Saturday?
We'll get him fit for you. We'll get him fit for you, yeah.
Yeah, we'll give him 20 minutes, or that lad at the back, Rio Ferdinand. Look, his legs are gone. Gary Neville, their legs are gone. Can you not send? So. And funnily enough, I went to when there was when the weather was bad last winter, and a lot of the Frickley games got cancelled. The weeks that Frickley games got cancelled, I went to see Peterborough instead because obviously they play on better pitches in the league, and we went to Fleetwood, me and my lad, and bumped into Alex Ferguson.
Wow.
There's only one entrance in and out, and so I do actually have a selfie. I wanted my lad to have his picture taken with Alex Ferguson, and he flat went, "No, I'm not." All right, then I am. You're taking a picture of me with Alex Ferguson then. And even though obviously Alex Ferguson is a devil incarnate, I thought this is the most famous football person I've ever met. So I've got to swallow my pride here, and got it. But he turns up for quite a lot of Peterborough games because obviously he's lad's boss. Well, there was a jinx because we didn't win. The first game we won with Ferguson present was the Johnston Paints final at Wembley. So we sort of broke the hoodoo that day, which was quite lucky. So but Daz Ferguson, he gets the nod. There's lots of other decent managers we've had. We had some mad managers as well, as say like Mark Lawrenson, and one of the Coopers was manager for a few weeks and won something like 1 in 10 or 1 in 12 or something like that. And so we've had some. Oh, and of course Steve Evans. Well, Steve Evans.
Talk about Steve Evans.
Because I'm sure most clubs would let you have him back happily.
What don't you like about Steve Evans?
For me, the football under him was, I think the word is "dur," they say in Scotland, and it was at Renard. Watch that. Yeah, when you've been used to a team that scores 100 goals, and then you see a Steve Evans side, you sort of that was you get spoilt, don't you? Sometimes, I suppose it's a bit like being a Liverpool fan, that you have this great season, and then when you're not killing it the next season, it takes you a while to sort of go, oh yeah, all right, okay, I'm all right. But yeah, Steve Evans. What I did love about Steve Evans, though, I loved watching him on the sideline. You could watch him.
Oh yeah,
watching the game, and that was if the game was poor, that's it.
Every time that
throwing everyone and shaking fists and having to go at the full official, and every time the linesman come past, I'll have a shout at him, and
he was doing so well. He was doing so well with Mansfield when he left as well. We were winning games, and then we had Flitcroft, and we were looking good for automatic promotion, and then we missed out on the playoffs. That's the bigger dip. But
I think I heard he lives quite near Peterborough, didn't he?
That's why he took the job. He lives there. Did
he live in Bedford or something like that?
Yeah, I'm not too sure. I know he lived near Peterborough.
He lives somewhere that way for certain.
Yeah, and that was the team he wanted to manage. Aside from Celtic, it was Peterborough he wanted to manage. So yeah,
mad. I mean, I know. Obviously, he was manager at Boston. I didn't know he was that on Peterborough, but he was. Like I say, he wasn't. I say he wasn't terrible. He was just mad.
Yeah.
The football we played wasn't super. I mean, I've seen his Gillingham team, and they're a bit of an hard watch, and so you think, well, once you have to work with what you've got, don't you? I suppose, but when you see a couple of their teams, you think, that's enough. I saw the Mansfield team again, and they were, as you say, they were going all right. I think I saw them play against Guiseley in the FA Cup. Someone scored a hat-trick for Mansfield. I forget who now. Evans was
Danny Rose.
Danny
Rose, who got the hat-trick?
Say again.
Danny Rose, did he get the hat-trick?
Yes, that was it. Yeah, correct. Yeah. That's the one. Yeah, that were it. And yeah, they were going quite well. And like I say, obviously, when he was at Boston, he had a decent team. But obviously, at the end of that time, there was the sort of the business about illegal payments, and so you wonder, well, was it his management, or was it because they were paying under the table and getting players they shouldn't really have had? And sort of always got that there, and they let Boston come up, didn't they? Even though they'd shown that he had committed the club had committed these offences, but no, he was. Maybe that's why I wouldn't want him as manager, because you'd be watching him, not the team. So. Have we got anyone? Do I need to pick a kit man or anything like that?
No. That's everything.
Brilliant.
Well, thank you
Big
very much
pleasure.
for coming back on, mate.
It has been an absolute pleasure.
And I'm sure we'll see you again on the road very soon. Hopefully.
God, we keep our fingers crossed, don't we?
Indeed.
We keep our fingers crossed. Everything crossed. Finally, get back out to some games and what have you. It's I've sort of after going to the games on Saturday, the games today on telly, they've just not been quite the same. And being out actually and feeling the fresh air yourself, and seeing players with beer bellies and in shirts that are too tight, just can't beat it.
No.
Just can't beat it.
Right. Thanks for coming back on again, Ken.
Been a pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Thanks, mate.